Hey FlossTube friends, good to see you. It's been a while. Last time I filmed and actually spoke to you was 2 months ago, so it feels like it's been forever. I'm really behind on watching FlossTube and obviously behind on filming, but I'm really glad to be here and share with you a little bit about what's been going on in my Stitchy world. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. I've gone on out of town and had some adventures. Let's see, last time I think I saw you, I was at the attic. I was showing you that video. So yeah, it's been busy and it's gonna get busier, but I just wanted to say hi before the holidays and share a little bit of what's the great stuff going on. So what have I been up to? I had a meetup that I think a lot of people have already talked about, the other folks in the meetup. The first meetup was with Laura of maudeandmozart on Instagram. The second half of Brenda and the Cereal Starter came to Bainbridge Island to visit her father. And Bainbridge Island is an island just across the water from me. And she reached out and wanted to meet up with some of the other stitchers in the area. And so Trixie Tricycle, Jodi, and Becca, Sambry Stitches, and Laura and I all got together. And all three of those ladies have done great synopsis of our day. It was a wonderful day. It really, truly was. It's kind of one of those goosebump, no words do it justice kind of experiences. It was great. I wish all of FlossTube land could meet up. I guess StitchCon is kind of like that. I'm not going to be able to attend that this year, but if that's at all how it feels, those of you going are going to have a blast. So that was one adventure I had, one great super day. And then I went to Acorns and Threads with Louise, a friend of mine, and that was great. I got to meet Janine, the owner, and her shop's lovely. If you've never been there, it's in Portland area, and I think Stitch Rody has done a tour of the shop. It's just a lovely, lovely needlework shop. It's about 2.5, 3 hours from my house, so it's a big day, but totally worth it. And then there was another meetup with Sambry Stitches Becca, Jodi, Trixie Tricycle, Colleen from Stitchin' with the Sisterlies, who lives in Snohomish, which is just a little bit north of me, and has really cute antique shops. And that was actually just yesterday. So that's been going on. I've had my kids coming and going for weeks at a time. My husband injured his foot and had to have surgery, so I've been dealing with that. And like I said, it's been busy and kind of wild, but super, super fun. And I'll insert some pictures either at the beginning or the end, or maybe pop them in between here. If you ever have an opportunity to meet up with another Instagrammer, FlossTuber, Stitcher, if you're in an area where there aren't stitchers and you go somewhere where there are, it doesn't really matter if you know them or if you've ever spoken to them, because you will just have an instant connection. I guarantee it. There's something about people who like to mess around with needles and thread that just, it connects you. And that's how I felt. So it's just been a really joyful, fun time. Not a lot of stitching, but that's okay. I also want to thank all of you, as always, who are so faithful to comment. I have some of the most lovely followers, and I mean, there's just a big, huge, wonderful world out there of FlossTube and Instagram and Stitchers. And when we can make some kind of connection and talk about a topic that we have interest in, it's just I don't know, just makes my heart happy. So thank you for those of you who reach out. Thank you for those of you who send stitchy kindness and letters, notes. It's so needed in our world today, just that personal touch. And I really can't thank you enough. I really can't. This adventure started out of necessity for connection because I'd lost my job and I wasn't around people and it was kind of tough. So I just thank you because I think it does us all good. It does us all good. I have had a few new subscribers and it's bumped me up to another marking point that I'm going to have a giveaway at some point during my video, and I thank you for that too. That just is so encouraging to know. It's just a way, I mean, there's a lot of great floss tubes out there and it's hard to keep up with all of them, truly. I just keep it on constantly when I'm home and I'm stitching and when it's quiet. But there is so much great stuff out there, and so just giving that person a little feedback and subscribing and liking their channel, it just motivates them to do another video. And anyone who's done a video, you know, it takes time, it takes effort, you're kind of putting yourself out there, and it's just, the feedback is so appreciated. So thank you for those of you who have given me feedback, who have liked and subscribed and followed. It truly means the world to me. It really does. So as far as stitchy kindness goes, I had someone let's see, 2 times ago send me, she asked me if I had the antique needlework and sampler magazine CD. And I said, it's coming for Christmas. And she said, well, I know some stuff on there that you're gonna want. So when it's time, I'm gonna send it to you so you don't have to go searching for it on the CD. And so she sent it to me, printed it out, put little tea bags in each pattern, a recipe for a pear cobbler. All the charts she sent were pears. So when Santa comes and I get that CD, I will already have these pears printed out, and I just thank you so much for doing that. It was a little bit ahead of, you know, it's like opening your present before Christmas, but I haven't touched it. It's all put aside until my present comes, and it's actually going to go under the tree, and it'll be there waiting for me. So thank you so much for doing that. And I also got something that I did get permission to talk about, and that was from a very, very generous and faithful follower, and her name is Padma. And Padma sent me some of her floss cards. They're just darling. And she said she is a lover of textiles and needlework. And that sounds like right up my alley. So Padma actually found 2 needle books, antique. This one is so cool. This is stitched on cardboard. And inside is fabric with the needles. It's completely homemade. It's rustic, it's primitive, it was well used and well loved, and now it has a new home, and I just love it. And she also sent this needle book, which is also handmade, and I believe quite old. It had a packet of needles in it. Handmade pages with the blanket stitch around and all the needles collected. And I'm not going to disturb anything. It's just going to live in my sewing room. Has a safe place and many other needle books to surround it. And if that wasn't enough, she found this book, Victorian brass needle cases, which I am going to just love looking through. So thank you so much. So kind, not at all necessary, not at all. I would do this, I do this because I love it, but it is fun. And then a newer floss tuber who I've mentioned a couple of times named Katie Strachan sent me just a really delightful gift, this card. And because she knows I love history, she said, "Dear Susan, I learned a really cool fact about SWA 103 recently." And so she sent me this pack of SWA 103, which I'm just dying because I can't wait to try it. And she said, "I knew you would appreciate it since you're interested in textile history and decided to send you some. It is the oldest continuously produced thread still being made today." Okay, how neat is that? This is the oldest continuously made thread, and it's still made today. Okay, I'm pretty sure my next new start has to be using this. I mean, just knowing that little tidbit. It was developed in the 1800s, and it was used by Charles Frederick Worth, the father of haute couture. He dressed Queen Alexandra, Empress Eugenie, and a host of royals and society women. And today we can still stitch with the same thread that he used on his dresses. And I think that is just so cool. And I agree. It is so cool. I already know what chart I want to use this on because the color palette is perfect for it. So Katie, thank you so much. And if you have not watched Katie yet, you need to go over and check her channel out. Katie Strachan Embroidery. Now I'm scared to death to try this, but I asked her, she's actually covering wooden boxes with her needlework. She's a student of needlework and crewel work and surface embroidery and a master. And she is using techniques that I can actually watch her tutorials and say, okay, I think I can do this. I'm scared to death to use stitchery, so I said, I think I'm going to try my first one just with a plain piece of fabric and cover a box with that fabric. Anyway, check it out. It's well worth your time, and she has put so much effort into everything that she's doing. Just amazing the talent that's out there. So, thank you everyone for that. I want to show you what I've been working on. I came back from the attic. You know, Jean, you're not going to believe it, Jean, but I actually have been stitching on the 56 count. I can't believe it either. It doesn't look like I've had much progress. So I'm stitching Emily Ann Foster, sorry for the glare, on 56 count. She's going to end up being a little 4-inch sampler. So when you see this teeny tiny bit, just know that that represents one page. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is only going to take up about that much room. And I can't believe it, but I can actually see it. And I'm using Tudor silk, of course, at the recommendation of Jean. She got me all set up. Tudor silk is so fine. It is almost like a hair. But it really is doable with proper lighting. I have a magnifying light and I have my readers. And as long as the light is really good, I can see because the holes are clear on this linen. And this linen is Kingston Cafe au Lait. So never in a million years thought I would do this. Never. And I won't do a ton. I'm going to try to commit after Christmas to doing 2 threads a day on this. You do 2 threads, you do half a page, and you make about an inch of progress. It's very, very slow, but then when you realize that's like a quarter of that row done, it's just small scale, so it's different, but I'm loving it. So thank you, Jean. It's almost like I feel like I got my training wheels off of my bike, and I'm pedaling down the road as fast as the wind. Anyway, so that's been really, really, really fun and a challenge. This year, I realized this year has been a year of new starts for me. Of course, new starts in a bazillion projects, which, that's okay. And a new start in Floss Tube, a new start in priorities in my life. So yeah, it's been an interesting year, and I do tend to get kind of reflective at this time of year. Okay, Nikki Noodle was talking about her hair getting curly, and it looked really nice, by the way, Nikki. There's just something about this time of year when it's raining and cold and damp, and I have curly hair, and I can straighten it, and I just go outside for 2 minutes, and I've got this weird thing going on. So anyway, Nikki, I feel your pain, although your hair looked great. All right, so anyway, new starts, new perspective, that's been this last year, new. And I think this next year, we're still recovering and still coming out of all this craziness that we've been living through. I think next year is going to be my year, and don't hold me to it, but of calm and peace and just focus and trying to finish some of the things I've started. So we'll see if I can do it. The next thing that I started and I've been working on is Anne Grimshaw, and this is also as a result of my visit to the attic. I started her on Russian tea cake at Jean's suggestion, and I just think she's beautiful. She's just beautiful. I've only put like a few, maybe an hour into each of these projects, so I haven't gotten very far, but you know what, they're there, and I am definitely a process stitcher. I enjoy the process. I enjoy finishing, but I am not a product. I'm not motivated by that. I am a putzer for sure. So Anne Grimshaw, I started for Black Sampler November at the suggestion of Jacob from Modern Folk Embroidery, and I think a lot of folks have joined in on that. When I was at the meetup with Laura and Becca and Jodi, I was stitching on my Anne Grimshaw, and I had her in the bag that I purchased her in, the linen and everything, and that's a big chunk of linen. And they were just like, Susan, why don't you make some project bags? And I said, I just don't want to make project bags because I want to make quilts and I want to do stitching. And it's like, but Susan, your project should be in a project bag. And I said, I know, Laura said, Laura said, I know you can do it, you know how to do it. I said, I know how to do it, but I don't want to. I'm not going to make project bags. I'm not, because I have so many other things going on. So Jodi, kind-hearted Jodi, went downstairs and brought up one of her project bags that she made, and she gave it to me. She said, Anne Grimshaw just cannot live in a plastic bag. And so I put her And I love her bags because they have this cool tab. She's got a tutorial on how to do her bags. So your floss goes in here and hangs. It's all compact. You've got a pocket for extra floss or whatever, and then you put in your chart, and then you can store it just like this, just like your other project bags. So even though I don't want next year to be a year of new beginnings, I decided, you know, I am going to try making some project bags. So after Christmas, I'm going to watch Jodi's tutorial. I'm going to get all the supplies. I have plenty of fabric, and I am going to make up a few project bags. Now, I could get really caught up in making everything match and coordinate. And I did watch Nicola on Hands Across the Sea recently, I think her latest floss tube, and she said that she likes everything to coordinate too. So that is a little bit of an issue that I could fall into. But anyway, so see, I said I'm not, and now I'm doing it. But that's okay, because this is all fun, and it's all the fun of everything about stitching and all the other fun things that go along with it, like meeting new friends and having all the doodads that go along with your project. So, all right, January 1st is Laura's big birthday, and the hashtag is Laura's Big Birthday Sal, and you know people have been talking about it quite a bit, but just a reminder that Elizabeth Isles is the chart, and we are all going to stitch this, or I think some people are doing another stitch in honor of Laura and her big birthday, because she is even more delightful to know and meet in person than she is as delightful as she is on floss tube. She is even more delightful in person. She's just lovely. So I've been playing around, and I have been following Jane Says on Instagram, and her conversion that she's doing to make it look like the antique. And Penny Tucker posted this, and this is the antique, and I was, of course, just captivated. And so I am kind of playing around with colors and messing around with floss, and I think I might go more in this direction. Here's the two. And I also have ordered the floss for the variety of skin tones for the angels, because I'd like to kind of change that a little bit too. So that's a new start that's coming in January, and hopefully not a whole lot more, but you know, you just never know. You just keep stitching and enjoying it. And then something I have to finish up before the end of the year, which might spill over into the 1st of January, but I'm involved in a block exchange, and the block exchange entails finding a group of quilters. I don't know if people do this with cross stitch. I do know Ellen Chester with a needle has a lovely Ackworth friendship book that you can exchange little tiny stitched pages with each other. Oh, looks like we have an Amber Alert in the middle of my floss tube. Oh, a storm warning. Okay. All right. I guess there's some weather coming. Hopefully not a lot of rain and hail. Hopefully you can still hear me. We'll just keep going and trying to get through this. So that's a lovely way to do an exchange with cross-stitching friends, and I do plan to do that. Make that book. I might make the pages and just have them cross-stitch their name. I'm not sure yet. Haven't quite figured that out, but that is in my plans for next year, which I'll share next month. But this block exchange is for quilts. And so I have some friends from my days when I lived in Texas who are just awesome quilters, and we wanted to stay connected. A few of us are out of this immediate area where we all met, and we wanted to keep connected. So we pick a block and we make however many, maybe like this year I make 6 of that block for each of the ladies in the group, and they make 6 for me. And so I end up with 36 blocks. This year we picked a block called Carolina Lily. And this is what it looks like. It can be on point or it can be sideways. There's so many different ways to set it, and we kind of all picked different color palettes that we liked, and different things we put in our request. So my request was to have my blocks made in red and green, which is pretty timely. Red and green is probably my favorite color combination, and of course it's very significant of Christmas, or we associate it with Christmas, but it's just a gorgeous palette to me, and I keep it out all year, so it's not just Christmassy. So anyway, so the reason everything is far apart is when you sew the seams, it's all going to pull in and match up like a wood puzzle. Anyway, so I have 36 of these to make. They're all cut out and ready to go. I just need to sit down at my sewing machine and get it done. But as you heard earlier, I've been kind of a social butterfly this last month or so, and now it's time to hunker down. All right. So, okay, speaking of red and green, why not? Why not? I'm going to talk about red and green, okay, because it is my favorite color combination, and it's something that you see a ton of this time of year. And why is that? Why is that we're seeing a ton of red and green? You know, we have come to associate that with the holiday of Christmas, and it was not always so. It was not always labeled for that holiday or that event. It did not always have that meaning. But for centuries it has been. And I was reading about that, and it looks like it started with the Celts, the Celtic culture, and some of their winter solstice celebrations. And we're talking about cold, deep winter in snow and long, dark days, short days with lots of darkness. And so in the Celtic culture, holly was considered a keeper of the earth and something beautiful in winter and something evergreen. So it was like this little piece of life popping up, or that was still living amidst all this frozen cold snow. And the red of the berry was, in that culture, considered protection and purity. And so then as the medieval days came and the churches were built, and these big painted panels called, I believe it's pronounced roods, R-O-O-D-S, I could be wrong, somebody can correct me. These big painted panels were painted and affixed to the walls in the medieval churches. They used a heavy amount of red and green. And then that transitioned to the 1880s and the Victorian times, when then it became very fashionable to send a Christmas greeting or some kind of a card, which many people still do today. In fact, Karen on Fox and Rabbit was talking about that, how she just loves to get cards, and it's kind of going out of fashion now, isn't it? You know, we're sending Instagram posts and emails, but anyway, and so these Victorian Christmas cards were full of red and green imagery, and so then it was leaning more towards that way. But it really, apparently, according to this article, sealed the deal in the 1920s when none other than Coca-Cola had a marketing campaign showing Santa drinking Coke, dressed in red with green, I guess, leaf, holly and whatnot around. And then it was kind of a sealed deal. So it had been progressing through time. So anyway, enough of that. So that's kind of, I think, a little bit of how we got to associate red and green with Christmas. But the meanings of red and green, and I talked about red before, several floss tubes ago, are varied and sometimes contradictory. So green can be known to represent luck and nature and new life and balance and harmony, but it can also represent envy and illness. Red, on the other hand, can represent your life force, your blood, your passion, your energy, and then on the other side of that, aggression. So why it has come, or how it has come to be associated with Christmas is still, something that I don't totally know about, but the little bit that I learned, I just shared with you. But oddly enough, there was a time period in American history where red and green quilts were just all the rage. I mean, it was like if you didn't have a red and green quilt or weren't making a red and green quilt, you just weren't somebody. I would have really loved that time, not because I wanted to be somebody, because I just love red and green quilts. But that time period happened in this country between about 1830 and 1900. It was super popular. And sometimes accent colors of orange and cheddar, like I talked about last time, or yellow were added to kind of bump up the quilts. And I have a couple little doll quilts that I made that kind of show this. This one was from a Jo Morton Doll Club class. So it's her fabric and kind of a pinwheel type block. It's just that red and green. It's that turkey red and that poison green, which I'll talk more about sometime if you're interested. And so I don't really make holiday quilts per se. I kind of decorate with the colors of that season or that holiday with my quilts that are reproduced from antiques, and just kind of warm it up that way. So, and then this one was from a class I took when I was in Texas. And it's reproduced from an antique quilt. And it is just like a expanded log cabin with all those straight lines and sticks. And I keep this rolled up in a basket. I have a bunch of small quilts rolled up, so that's why it's kind of curling in. Anyway, so that's how I like to decorate at Christmas. Anyway, and then I'm going to show a video of another quilt that's hanging that I took a video of that has red and green and black. So I'll pop that in right here. This is one of my favorite red and green quilts. It's not a reproduction of an antique. It's actually a Primitive Gatherings pattern. And it's red and green with a little pop of black. And I just love it. It's teeny tiny. It's when I was trying teeny tiny piecing. And so the half square triangles, I think, are 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, finished, made into pinwheels. And I do think the pattern is still available. Let's see. I think it's called Miniature Pinwheels by Lisa Bongean, Primitive Gatherings. And it's hanging. This is interesting. So this is a fun way to hang quilts, even samplers. This is a pew hymnal holder, book holder. It's upside down, so it would be turned over and the books would be in here going down that way. So it's turned over upside down, and these rings, my husband put these rings on, and then these clips just hook over, and then I could put my little village set on the top. So anyway, just a fun option for displaying your stuff. But I wanted to show you that red and green with the pop of black and how I just think it's really rich, and I leave this quilt out all year. I love it. And so I really also love that quilt too, and I just love red and green, and I don't mind red and green with a lot of other colors as long as red and green is predominant. Just, I don't know, just seems to be what I'm drawn to. I did finish a really large quilt earlier in the year, and I haven't shown it yet. I don't think. I might have posted it on Instagram. I can't remember, but I will put in some pictures here. It was a quilt that the pattern is not available, so I hate to do that, but it was probably a 2-year project, has huge big borders, and it's red and green with some cheddar and some chrome yellow, and it's called Cousin's Walk, and I will link the information on the pattern below in case you can get it on the secondary market. But it was the Quilted Crow Girls actually purchased this quilt. It's from 1860, and so we're that same time period that we're talking about. They are an Australian group, but they purchased this quilt at Houston Quilt Market in Houston, Texas, and went back and reproduced it, and then sold the pattern. And anyway, I'm going to put the video or just some pictures in of that. It was hand quilted and hand appliqued, and it's something that I really love, and I'm going to put out on my bed this time of year. All right. So, and there were pieced quilts too in red and green, but so why, why red and green during that time period? Why was it the rage? Well, most of the quilts during that time period were applique, and so they represent nature, and there's lots of red and green in nature. So the thought is that maybe that's why, nobody knows for sure. It was also a trend, and we know how trends happen and people get caught up. But also red and green dyes were probably the most stable at that time, and people were making an heirloom and they wanted it to last. Now, however, unfortunately, the dyes weren't long-term stable, and the green turned to brown and yellow and yellowed. And so as that started happening, the red and green quilts kind of went out of fashion. So it's kind of interesting. But I have a few books I'll show you, and I know if you're not here for quilts, I'm going to pop into some samplers here in a minute. I like to combine both, and I really love to see the connection between the two, because as you'll see in a minute, when these quilts were being made, there were a lot of samplers being stitched in those same colors. So, all right, this is a great quilt by Gina Kimball. She is a master appliquer. It's all about red and green. It gives you some information in the beginning, some history, and then each quilt block. And then she has all the variations of the quilt block. This is just like the most incredible resource. So, Red and Green, an Applique Tradition by Gina Kimball. This is an awesome book as well. Red and Green Quilts from the Pooh's Collection by Kay Triplett. Now there's one in here, actually this one on the cover. I did purchase the pattern to reproduce. So someday that's on my bucket list. And it gives you history of the antique quilts and information. And then in the back there are, I believe, 5 patterns with the full scale templates. So when you're done with your Blackbird Designs project, those of you who are doing that, and that is another thing I've been working on. I've been working on basket blocks. I have a whole bunch more of those done. But when you're done with that and you want to, if you want to reproduce maybe even just one block for a pillow, these are really great resources. And you don't have to do them in red and green, if you'd rather. This one is called the Circuit Rider's Quilt. It's an album quilt honoring a beloved minister. And so in the 1800s, there were not churches in every village, and the minister, was not a minister in every village, sorry. The minister would go from village to village, and so he was called a circuit rider. And so in the 1860s, if you wanted to honor your minister, you would make a quilt block. Each member of the family, or each family would represent their family with a block, and put it together as a quilt, especially if the minister retired. So this was really common in the 1860s. And so this just has, several blocks, and it doesn't have any significance to, churches or anything. It's just, this happened to be a pretty common practice during the 1860s to make a quilt for the traveling preacher. So that's a great book, a resource. And then this book is Coxcomb Quilt by Donna Ines. And it's a 4-block quilt. And that was also very common, where you would just take 4 blocks. And that's something that if you're just starting out and these are very complex blocks. You could start out with 4 simple blocks and not do an applique border, just do a beautiful stripe or floral for the outside. It's a great way to finish. So this is a lovely book as well. So I just wanted to share those because, so that's the red and green quilt world. Now, I still love red and green today, so it's not completely out of fashion, but the sampler world definitely has its own red and green story, and it shows up around the same time as these quilts, and it shows up pretty commonly as a strong indicator of a Scottish quilt or sampler. However, after reading about it, and like I always say, I am not an expert. I'm just somebody who loves to research, and I love to share what I found out. And as I find out new things, I'll give you updates. And as you share things with me, I'll share those with you. So, but what I found is that this red and green, of course, is a very strong indicator of course, Scottish samplers, and those seem to be predominantly stitched in those colors during that time frame as well. So I find that very curious and very interesting. Now, the information I was reading said that you really cannot verify that it's a Scottish sampler completely without 2 or 3 clues, because it could have been an English sampler, it could be a sampler from somewhere else, and we're talking about a classic marking sampler. And so these are the clues and that will help you identify for sure that it's a sampler from Scotland if you're interested in antique samplers and you're purchasing them or wanting to stitch them. And so it would be the name on the sampler, the colors used, of course, the surname, the verse, if it's a Scottish verse, or if it's in Gaelic, I guess. The alphabets used. We know that the curly Q is pretty common in Scottish samplers. So the motifs that show up, and of course I remember when I talked about peacocks that open tail peacock motif is really classic in Scottish samplers for some reason. The place that it was stitched and the initials. And so okay, so there's a new sampler that I had to go run and buy, of course, as soon as Michelle showed it. Mary Small, and she's a red and green Scottish sampler, but she was maybe possibly stitched in India because her father was in service, I believe, in India. I believe that's what it says, in 1863. And so, you know, that's interesting. I also read that people traveled, and so you might be stitching your sampler as a Scottish person of Scottish descent, but be in another country. So some other charts that I found that I think are great for red and green samplers. If you're another one that I think is lovely is Eliza Hepton, and this is by Hedgerow Stitching. Ann Taylor from Heartstring Samplery. Apologize for the glare. And this one I need to stitch straight away because I've been collecting samplers with names in my family and this is my middle name, Winifred. And this is Pineberry Lane, Winifred Clark, 1892. Lovely, lovely red and green sampler. It came with a partial floss pack, and it came with this shade of lighter green. That was interesting. And then we have Jane Thwaites, and so this lovely chart has these threads, little tiny pop of blue, but predominantly red and green. So another great one if you want to do red and green. And then of course, many of you know that I'm stitching the Old Scott, and I think that one I would say is predominantly red and green, but I'll show you what I've done so far. I think I've shown this already, but I'm not showing a ton of stitching. I just love it, and it's getting dark. So those are some of my favorites. And then I just ordered a book. And then, okay, I'm dying to get Mary Snow. I'm having a hard time accessing it. I didn't jump on that at ASAP. And so I know it's out there, but I do want to stitch her. That's the new Hands Across the Sea. If I can find a picture, I'll pop it in here and show it to you. I think it's lovely. And then I did just purchase a book on Scottish samplers called Remember Now Thy Creator by Naomi Tarrant, E.A. Tarrant, T-A-R-R-A-N-T, or Tarrant. And I had to look quite a bit before I found it at a reasonable price. It was on eBay for, I think, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So anyway. And then I want to show you my little antique red and green Scottish sampler. She's a little faded. She does have a bit of black. She does have a tiny bit of blue. The black is a little bit, it's migrated a tiny bit. The green is, some of the green is quite faded. It's kind of gone to that tannish brown color that is so common. But I just love her, and I do plan to chart her someday. I think she's so sweet, but she hangs in my bedroom, and I just love her. Her name is Grace Hislop. Grace Hislop. And she was stitched in 1847. So that same time frame that these red and green samplers were stitched, it's the same time frame that these red and green quilts were just the rage. So I don't know enough about the samplers to know if they were red and green was all the rage prior to that, the 1800s, but I do plan to find that out. If any of you do know that, I'd love you to share that with me. I love learning. I have a lot to learn. I love sharing, and like I said before, as I learn new things, I will definitely amend my comments or add to my comments. But anyway, just sweet. All right. So I do have a couple of giveaways. I'm so appreciative of those of you who have signed up for my channel, and I hope that you will subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope that if you win the giveaway, that you will stitch it and that you will use it for a good purpose and enjoy it, because I'm sharing this, you know, out of my love for stitching, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to share this with you. So the first thing I want to give away is a sampler chart that I accidentally bought two of because I liked it so much. Excuse me. It's Sarah Comfort. Sorry, try to edit that out. By Queenstown Sampler Designs. And it would have been perfect for Black Sampler November, and I do plan to stitch it and put it on together with Anne Grimshaw. So for this one, let's say Comfort. Remember, you need to be 18 years old. Don't say giveaway. I'm going to ask you for your address. I'm going to mail it to you. So all the things. The next one I loved so much. I bought, and then I was gifted the chart, and you look at Nikki Noodle and Betsy Klager's most recent videos, you will see this completed. Nikki Noodle personalized it for Betsy Klager for her birthday, but it is Sampler Maker by With My Needle, and I love this. Can't wait to stitch it. So that one will just say Sampler if you'd like to win this one. And then the last one is by Samplers Remembered. It's a row of country houses borrowed from an antique sampler, and it's called Sampler Roll. So for this one, we'll just say Roll. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you found something interesting. I hope you're stitching. I know red is such a popular thread to stitch with. Anyway, enjoy the season, enjoy your family, enjoy those people you love, and just make time for stitching. And I'll see you again in January. Happy holidays.